Razor's Edge, an incredible and scenic but strenuous and technical double black diamond trail that winds through limestone slabs on the cliffs overlooking the Bow Valley in Alberta. So, how is it that I got to finding myself staring up at a cloudless blue sky on one of the hardest mountain biking trails in the Alberta Rockies? I would say that my journey with mountain biking started about 3 years ago when I came across this Kijiji ad. $25 for what was the coolest bike ever when I was a teenager. A Gary Fisher Joshua, front and back shocks. I've had some experience building and rebuilding road bikes, commuter bikes, and restoring old department store bikes, and I just enjoy tinkering and riding on my tinkered creations, so I rebuilt the old Y-frame and took it out for a spin. I live beside Nose Hill Park, a really big natural grassland park in Calgary that is riddled with trails. Immediately, I fell in love with riding these trails, maybe because the plush, bouncy, bobbing suspension reproduced the ride quality of my equally old van. I started taking the Gary Fisher farther and farther out into the woods. I got a lot of comments like, "I can't believe you're riding that." But hey, whatever, I was having a great time. Now, one aspect that I really enjoyed about mountain biking was the joy of discovery. There's always a new trail to explore or a new way to ride something, even if it's just for an hour in the morning before work. Now, I'm not that young, and I have responsibilities, so I'm quite cautious when it comes to speed and descents, and jumps, especially jumps. But I like climbing. Climbing sort of became an addiction. How steep can I go? How do I move my weight to get the perfect balance between traction and steering? How do I get over the roots and the rocks without putting a foot down? I found interesting challenges everywhere that I looked, and all of this on a 25-year-old bike. In hindsight, I would have had just as much fun doing that with my 26-inch hardtail commuter bike, but sometimes it just takes a little novelty to jumpstart a passion. Well, within a few months, I had outgrown the Gary Fisher Y-frame because, well, the frame cracked, which was apparently a common problem with these bikes. But in an act of providence, I came across this giant NRS at my local bike shop. It was still almost 20 years old and needed a little work, but it would get me back on the trails. This new old bike opened up a whole world of riding for me. I'm sure it was nowhere near as stable and forgiving as a modern mountain bike, and sometimes I just couldn't keep up with my buddies on the trail. But at my age, I've learned that mountain biking is really about spending time outdoors and building meaningful relationships rather than sending it and hurting myself trying to be something that I'm not. Anyways, last fall I finally got a 2015 Giant Trance, which isn't the latest and greatest, but it has all the newer features that I felt I really needed, like a slacker head tube angle, a longer wheelbase, better suspension design, all things that I really appreciate because I worked so hard without them. So, what's my point? Why am I telling this story? Well, my first point is a bit of a disclaimer. Relatively speaking, I don't have all that much experience mountain biking, so if you want to learn how to ride this trail, this is not the best video to watch. I'm not even sure how much planning went into this. I think we all just decided to come out here a few days ago. But what I can say is that I'm really loving this trail. The climb up here on Prairie View from the Barrier Lake trailhead is long, and it just gets steeper and steeper and steeper until you just basically have to carry your bike up. Then it opens up to this incredible view of the Kananaskis Valley. From the top, the trail then takes you down some loose and steep rocks, followed by a fast but chunky and rooty section in the forest. The entrance to Razor's Edge is easy to miss, so have trail forks handy. The start of Razor's Edge is a narrow climb with a lot of exposed roots and rocks. I did a good bit of walking because my skills were no match. I had to pick my battles carefully on this trail. As you reach the top, the trail gradually opens up to views of the Bow Valley to your right. Lots of rock gardens with a few steep slabs in between to keep things interesting. Some of these slabs are quite steep and off-camber, not things I really wanted to attempt today.
I think I should walk this one.
There's a large rock slab that everyone takes pictures of. Once you commit over the top and tuck in behind the saddle, it's really not that bad because it's smooth and tacky, as long as you don't lose it on the loose stuff at the bottom. My second point in this video is that you don't need to be a young guy and have an expensive bike and ride in exotic locations to enjoy mountain biking. I'm none of those, and I've still gained so much from mountain biking, like the grit I've built from pushing myself physically and mentally, or my reflections on the vastness of the universe and the seeming evanescence of all my efforts when I'm off the grid by myself in the wilderness, or the life-giving conversations I've had with friends on the ride out or on long climbs. My last point is, you will crash. I have crashed lots. Crashing is something that's going to happen to anyone that spends any amount of time doing anything difficult. And it's often hard to weigh the benefits against the risks in the endeavors that you tackle. You want to make the most of opportunities and relationships, but you can't do it if you're broken or dead. What is it that you want most in life? How does everything you do converge to that focus? These are all thoughts that came to me, tangled up in my bike on the edge of a cliff, staring up at the big blue sky. Some photographers call this the flash of perception, a moment where you're suddenly stopped by something startling or shocking or absorbing. How do I capture the clarity and the beauty, and its contrast with my visceral groanings in this moment? Thankfully, it was a pretty minor fall. Kind of a slow motion tumble where my jello arms decided it would be better to just lie down rather than keep fighting those handlebars. The trail continued down the ridge where the jaw-dropping scenery provides a constant distraction as the steep rocks try to drop you onto your jaw. Totally awesome. I think the trail used to continue down the ridge and spit you out onto the Trans-Canada Highway, but it's been rerouted to a fun and flowy section through the trees that connects with the Quaite Valley Trail. Exhausted, we climbed back up the easy but never-ending trail to Jewell Pass. Finally, after 5 hours of continuous riding, I was definitely pretty cautious descending Jewell Pass because I was tired and I wanted to end the day well. Anyways, I'm really thankful for my friends who brought me, who, I should add, were much more experienced than me. I really enjoyed Razor's Edge. I think it was in my cup of tea, up my wheelhouse, just my kind of alley. You get the idea. It had lots of climbing, 1,100 meters of it. It was technically challenging and the speed was limited. No big jumps or things that would send me like a fish in the air. And best of all, after 6 hours and 27 kilometers, the thing I remembered most clearly was that big blue sky. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. Do click like or subscribe. If you're watching this in preparation for riding Razor's Edge, I do suggest talking to somebody who's actually ridden it before. In the meantime, back to Nose Hill.